My dad always kept his promises. At least, that's what I believed for most of my life. Robert wasn't perfect, but he was the kind of man whose word meant everything. So when he promised me, my younger brother Tyler, and our half-sister Olivia that he had set aside $100,000 each for us in his will, I never doubted him. It wasn't about the money, it was about knowing that even after he was gone, he would still be taking care of us. But standing in Marcus's office, the soft hum of the air conditioner the only sound in the room, I felt my whole world tilt off its axis. "I'm sorry, Jenna," Marcus said gently, adjusting his glasses and avoiding my eyes. "The inheritance. It's gone." I blinked at him, trying to make sense of the words. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" Tyler, sitting next to me, shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his jaw clenched as he stared at Marcus. "No, that can't be right. Dad promised us." "He promised." "I know," Marcus said, running a hand through his neatly combed brown hair. "Your father's will clearly stated that each of you would receive $100,000, but after his passing, your stepmother, Diane, was the executor of the estate. She had full access to the funds." My stomach dropped. Diane. My relationship with Diane had always been tense, to say the least. She married my dad when I was 15 after my mom died of cancer. I tried to be open-minded, I really did, but Diane always felt like an intruder, someone who smiled just a little too perfectly and knew exactly how to make herself seem indispensable. My dad loved her, though, and for his sake, I tolerated her. "Wait," I said, gripping the edge of the desk. "Are you saying Diane spent our inheritance?" Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. The records show that the funds were withdrawn in several large sums over the past year. By the time your father passed away, there was nothing left." Tyler let out a bitter laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Unbelievable. She didn't waste any time, did she?" I felt like I couldn't breathe. My dad had been sick for a long time, but the end had come quickly. Too quickly. Diane had barely waited until his body was cold before draining the account. "What about Olivia?" I asked suddenly, thinking of our half-sister. Only 18 and just starting college. Her tuition, her future. Marcus sighed. "I'm afraid that money's gone too." The room felt too small, too suffocating. I stood up abruptly. "No, this isn't happening. She can't do this. That money wasn't hers to spend." "I understand how you feel, Jenna," Marcus said softly, "but legally, as the executor, she had the authority. Unless you can prove she acted in bad faith or mismanaged the estate, there's not much you can do." I stared at him, disbelief giving way to cold, simmering rage. "Then I'll prove it." Later that night, I found myself pacing my tiny apartment, phone in hand, trying to wrap my head around everything. I had always known Diane was selfish, but this was a whole new level of betrayal. My phone buzzed. It was my best friend, Alexis. "Hey, Jen. You okay?" Her voice was soft, but I could hear the concern beneath it. "No, not really," I admitted. "Diane spent our inheritance." "Wait, what?" Alexis practically yelled. "You mean the money your dad left you guys?" "Yeah," I whispered, feeling the weight of it settle on my chest again. "That. Unbelievable," Alexis muttered. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I said, sinking onto my couch. "But I'm not letting her get away with this." The next day, I decided to confront Diane. She lived in the house my dad had left behind, the one with the perfectly manicured lawn and the white picket fence that always felt more like a movie set than a home. When she opened the door, her fake smile faded the moment she saw me. "Jenna," she said coolly, "this is unexpected." "Yeah, I bet," I replied, pushing past her into the house. The living room was immaculate as always, not a single thing out of place. It made me sick. "What do you want?" Diane asked, folding her arms. I turned to face her, my heart pounding. "I know you spent the inheritance, Diane. The money Dad left for me, Tyler, and Olivia. Where is it?" Her eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb," I snapped. "Marcus showed me the records. You drained the account. What did you spend it on? New clothes? A vacation? Botox?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Watch your tone, young lady." "Or what?" I shot back. "You going to call the cops?" "Please do." I'd love to explain to them how you stole $300,000 from your own stepkids. Diane's eyes flickered with something, fear, maybe, but she quickly masked it with indifference. Your father trusted me with his estate. Everything I did was within my rights. Maybe legally, I said, stepping closer, but morally, you're a thief. And I'm going to prove it. With that, I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. That night, as I sat on my bed with my laptop open in front of me, I made a list. Every transaction, every questionable purchase, every inconsistency I could find. I needed proof that Diane had mismanaged the estate. If I could find it, I could take legal action. Tyler called me as I kneeled in front of the bank statements. Hey, he said quietly. Hey, I replied, not looking away from the screen. I've been thinking, he continued. Maybe we should just let it go. I froze. What? I mean, it's not like we can bring Dad back. And fighting Diane. It's going to be messy, expensive. Maybe it's not worth it. I closed my laptop and rubbed my eyes. Tyler, she stole from us. From Olivia. How can we just let that go? He sighed. I don't know. I'm tired, Jen. I softened. Me too. But if we don't fight, she wins. There was a long pause, then finally, Tyler said, Okay, I'm with you. I smiled faintly. Thanks, Ty. After we hung up, I opened my laptop again, more determined than ever. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I found myself sitting in Marcus's office again, a stack of papers in front of me. My laptop was open to the countless bank statements I had printed overnight. Dark circles shadowed my eyes from lack of sleep, but adrenaline kept me going. Jenna, Marcus said gently, scanning through the documents. This is a lot of information, but it's not quite enough. We need clear proof that Diane misused the estate funds. There has to be something, I insisted, my voice cracking. She didn't just burn through $300,000 without leaving a trace. Marcus sighed. I understand, but legally it's tricky. As executor, she had the authority. Unless we can prove she acted in her own self-interest and not in the best interest of the estate, she's protected. I slumped back in my chair, feeling the weight of the battle ahead. Just as I was about to respond, my phone buzzed. Hey, I whispered, stepping into the hallway. What's up? You're not going to believe this, Alexis said, excitement lacing her voice. I did some digging of my own. I straightened up. What did you find? Remember Diane's business, venture, she wouldn't shut up about last year? I frowned. Yeah, something about real estate. Bingo, Alexis said. Turns out she invested a huge chunk of money into a luxury condo project downtown. And guess what? The project tanked. She lost everything. My stomach flipped. Are you serious? Dead serious, she replied. And it gets better or worse, depending on how you look at it. The project was shut down for financial mismanagement and fraud. Diane's name isn't directly tied to it, but she definitely funneled a lot of cash into it. I rushed back into Marcus's office, cutting him off mid-sentence. I've got something to keep building our case step by step. Every piece of evidence counts. The court date was set, and with each passing day, the reality of what we were about to do hit harder. I had never imagined myself standing in a courtroom, fighting against Diane for what was rightfully ours. But the more I thought about it, the more determined I became. Diane had taken so much from us, our inheritance, our future, and the trust we had in her as family. She was going to pay for it. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was packed with people, the air thick with tension. I sat with Tyler, Olivia, Alexis, and Cole, all of us wearing expressions of quiet determination. Diane entered the courtroom with her lawyer, looking every bit the picture of innocence, but I could see the underlying arrogance in her eyes. She knew she had done something wrong, but she was going to fight tooth and nail to get away with it. The judge entered, and everyone rose. We sat back down, and the trial began. Marcus presented the evidence, piece by piece. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the forged signatures on the life insurance policy, each piece of the puzzle falling into place. But Diane's lawyer was quick to counter every move we made, arguing that she had acted within her rights as the executor of the estate. It was exhausting, the constant back and forth, but I couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything she had done. When it was our turn to testify, I felt my nerves settle. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice. I spoke first, recounting how my father had promised us the inheritance and how we had discovered that Diane had squandered it all. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told the court exactly what Diane had done, how she had drained the account, how she had manipulated her way into my father's life, and how she had stolen from all of us. Tyler followed, his voice shaky but firm. Olivia was next, and despite her youth, she spoke with the clarity of someone who had been wronged. She told the court how Diane had promised to look after her, but instead, she had used her account for her own gain. As the testimony continued, Diane's composure began to crack. She tried to maintain her innocent front, but I could see the cracks starting to show. She knew she was losing. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge called for a recess. We all left the courtroom, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if we had done enough, if the evidence we had gathered would be enough to convict her. But I knew one thing. We had fought for what was ours, and I wasn't going to give up. When the judge returned, the courtroom fell silent. He spoke calmly but firmly, addressing both sides before delivering his verdict. In light of the evidence presented, the judge said, "I find the defendant, Diane, guilty of misappropriating the funds from the estate, of forging Robert's signature on the life insurance policy, and of using funds from the inheritance for personal gain." I held my breath as he continued. "Diane will be required to pay restitution in full, including the return of the funds withdrawn from the estate, the life insurance payout, and any additional damages incurred as a result of her actions." I couldn't believe it. She was going to have to pay. The justice we had fought so hard for was finally within our reach. As the courtroom emptied, Diane's lawyer stormed out, but Diane remained, her face pale and drawn. I met her gaze, and for the first time, I saw the fear in her eyes. She had lost. She had underestimated us. Tyler, Olivia, Alexis, and I stood together, our faces lit up with a mixture of relief and triumph. Diane had taken so much from us, but in the end, we had taken back what was rightfully ours. As we left the courthouse, I felt a sense of closure, not just for the money, but for everything else that had been taken from us, our trust, our family, and our peace of mind. Diane might have won the battle for my father's heart, but we had won the war for justice. And in the end, that was all that mattered.